Welcome, my friends. This is probably the most important video I have done yet. It is a please, my friends, we need your help. Watch till the end. Who owns our natural resources? Please like, subscribe, or follow. The war for Canada's natural resources is almost over, and we lost because we were looking for the wrong kind of enemy. There will be no tanks. The real invasion was happening inside our boardrooms, our stock markets, and our digital servers. This isn't a military occupation. It is a quiet, total resource theft, and it is almost finished. The groundwork for this takeover was laid years ago. They are using AI to map our riches, and political insiders like Stephen Harper, Daniel Smith, Doug Ford, and Scott Moe to clear the path, turning our own ground into a colony for American interests. This is the new front line of war. They are executing a slow-motion heist, and they are doing it with our own silence as their greatest weapon. When Stephen Harper became Prime Minister, and when one reached a turning point when he took charge of the International Democrat Union, that move opened the door for a new era of American influence, turning our provinces into prime targets for foreign interests. Since then, the machinery of this heist has been built in the shadows. The political dynasties, the Harpers, the Trumps, and their rich allies have moved beyond simple lobbying. They are now directly owning the financial systems that control Canadian wealth and world wealth. This is universal. When Harper, IDU, left office, both he and his son Ben Harper took jobs with the Alberta and Saskatchewan governments. Since leaving those roles, Stephen Harper has increasingly mirrored Donald Trump's behavior. He has bypassed traditional diplomatic protocols to meet with world leaders while supporting the agendas of Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu. Meanwhile, his son Ben Harper is now a director at Luxor Technology, a company that builds infrastructure for Bitcoin mining. This gives him specialized knowledge in the digital assets that are becoming central to modern power structures. Just as Trump's sons have launched World Liberty Financial, a crypto firm that is currently seeking a national bank charter to issue its own stablecoin. This marks a major shift. Political families are no longer just influencing policy, they are moving to directly own and control the financial systems themselves. By the time the average Canadian realizes that the minerals beneath their feet have been signed over to foreign hands, the deal will be sealed and the resources will be gone. No bombs, no tanks. Just a total resource theft, designed to finish before we even know the battle has started. Political family kings and oligarchical takeover, AI and natural resources. This is the new army. The part Musk has played? Remember that Epstein had the job of trafficking arms, money, and humans. For the IDU and Heritage Foundation to complete the oligarchical takeover, Project 2025 and the takeover of Canada's natural resources is essential. To accomplish this, a new shadow banking system is rising. Musk has effectively building a private financial network that operates outside the reach of the traditional regulated banks we have relied on for generations. Critics and regulators are deeply worried because this system doesn't just process payments. It bypasses the standard financial safeguards that are supposed to prevent money laundering, illegal payoffs, and the movement of dark money. Instead of a system where banks answer to government rules, this is a private sector alternative controlled by a small circle of tech and finance elites. It effectively concentrates the power to move wealth across borders in the hands of a few, creating the perfect infrastructure for the kind of secretive, untraceable financial activity that once kept people like Jeffrey Epstein in businesses. Noted here is a 2026 letter from the U.S. Senate Banking Committee to Elon Musk. In this formal inquiry, the committee raised alarms about the platform's potential to facilitate illicit finance, stating, "This track record of scams, fraud, and sanctioned individuals using the platform raises serious questions about the privacy, scams, and frauds, and illicit finance risks X-Money may pose." Today, the final phase is in full swing, and it is powered by a dangerous combination of AI and political muscle. They are using AI to build high-tech treasure maps of our country, pinpointing every vein of gold, copper, and rare mineral beneath our feet. This AI doesn't just find resources, it creates AI projections that guide the stock market manipulation, weeding out the middle class and making the rich richer. And the muscle? They aren't hiding anymore because the recent hiring of former U.S. Homeland Security Chief Kristi Noem as a strategic advisor for Nova Red Mining is a blunt, final warning. This made headlines. It is not a standard business hire. It is a tactical deployment. For U.S. interests, she is the spearhead, brought in to use her high-level government power to ensure that our mining industry acts as a colony for Trump, Harper, and American interests, bypassing any local opposition that might try to get in the way. Behind me is the reach of Noem's company Nova Red, and Nova Red is just one. Why is this important? As the table behind me shows, most of the companies Nova Red is associated with are mostly owned, stocks, by American interests. How does Canada protect from takeover when the foundational actions have already been completed? American giants like BlackRock and Vanguard already control the biggest mining operations in this country, and many of the world, from the gold mines of Ontario to the potash mines of Saskatchewan. They have layered their ownership so deeply that the most Canadian can no longer tell who actually owns the dirt they walk on. Who are they? BlackRock is a publicly traded company. This means it is owned by shareholders who buy its stock on the open market. Its largest shareholders are actually other institutional investors, including Vanguard, State Street, and even itself. It is managed by CEO Larry Fink and a board of directors, but it is ultimately a for-profit corporation. Vanguard has a unique mutual ownership structure. It is owned by its own investment funds, and those funds are owned by the individual investors who put their money into them. Because it has no outside public shareholders, it technically operates to serve its fund investors rather than external corporate owners. Institute of Business and Finance. They don't need a single bomb or a single tank to finish the job. They are using code, contracts, and our own silence to walk away with our country's birthright. By the time the average person realizes that the minerals beneath their feet have been signed over to foreign interests, the deal will be sealed. The trenches are dug, the traps are set, and the robbery is in its final act. We are standing on the edge of a total resource vacuum, and if we don't wake up and start making noise right now, in 3 years there will be nothing left for us to call our own. The squeeze isn't a single event that happens on a specific day. It is a gradual tightening of control. Based on how institutional ownership and AI-driven mapping are already being deployed, here is the realistic timeline and the logistical reality of how this affects Canada. So what is the timeline? The slow-motion squeeze in the next 1.3 years, the consolidation. This is the window where the final pieces of the shadow infrastructure are locked in. The AI mapping of our critical mineral deposits is finalized, and the last remaining independent sites are brought under the umbrella of strategic partnerships, often through American-led consortia that claim to be securing our supply chains. In 3-5 years, the policy pivot. Once ownership is sufficiently centralized, the squeeze moves to government policy. Expect to see national security laws, similar to what we are seeing in the U.S. or through new digital surveillance bills, that make it illegal to restrict the export of these resources. They will argue that since these mines are essential to the North American AI industrial base, Canada no longer has the sovereign right to prioritize its own domestic use. They will argue the takeover is necessary to protect U.S. sovereignty. What's the logistical reality? What happens on the ground? When a country loses control of its natural resources, the squeeze feels less like a war and more like a series of quiet, everyday losses. Here is how it hits the average person. First, we will experience the export-only economy. If the owners are American institutions, BlackRock, Vanguard, and the priority is supplying a U.S.-led AI grid, Canadian companies will be forced to sell their raw materials offshore at global prices. This creates a supply shortage at home. You might find that your own country's lithium, copper, or lumber becomes more expensive for Canadians to buy than it is for American tech firms to import. Then, the infrastructure will be hollowed out. Because these mines and compute parks, a compute park is built to house thousands of massive, specialized computers, the kind needed to run artificial intelligence, are managed by automated AI, they don't function like the factories of the past. They don't hire thousands of local workers. They hire a small crew of highly specialized technicians. Your local town might see the mine open, but you won't see the thousands of jobs that usually come with it. The wealth stays in the balance sheets of the shareholders in New York, not in the local community. Thus, the destruction of Canadian regulatory laws, the Nome effect. You will see local environmental and land use laws start to vanish. When a site is labeled critical infrastructure for U.S. national security, local town councils and provincial regulators lose the power to say no. If a community objects to a massive data center draining their water or a mine destroying their soil, the federal government, under pressure from U.S. advisors, will simply override them. 4. What about the shadow finance trap? If our money and trade flows are tied to the shadow banking system that Musk and the others are building, which is predicted, we lose our fiscal independence. If a Canadian government ever tries to tax these companies or demand a fairer share of the profits, the money train can simply move to another jurisdiction with the click of a button. They will hold our economy hostage by threatening to pull out their capital if we don't play by their rules. Let me tell you the bottom line. The squeeze is a process of stripping sovereignty. It doesn't mean our resources vanish. It means, even with Carney's new laws, thank you for being so foresighted, PM Carney, the U.S. will say they are no longer ours to use or control. We could become the landlord who is locked out of his own building, watching the new owners extract everything of value while we pay the property taxes and deal with the broken plumbing. The deadlock could take years to litigate. They are building a system where Canada provides the land, the power, and the resources, but the American shareholders collect the check. Please, Canada, wake up. For world health, globalism saves lives. May peace be with you, my friends.